Welcome to Shoe Talk, formerly known as Running Shoe and Training Talk for June 2024. It's been a bit of an evolution. As I talked about last month, I'm just going to change this series to be me talking about shoes off the cuff. No notes, no script, no nothing in front of me, just some shoes that I pulled off my shelf that I'm currently running in, and other shoes that maybe I'm not running in or looking forward to, because you're basically here to hear me talk about shoes, and I want a place to be able to talk about shoes off the cuff. So that's what this video is going to be. Training updates, I'm just going to do is standalone videos. If you're watching or watch my 5K sort of update about a month and a half ago, there'll be an update on that coming soon in the next couple weeks. And any kind of channel updates, I'll either do as a community post, which I did recently, or if it's really big, I will talk about it as a video on the channel. So that frees this series up to just be called Shoe Talk, which is not a precious name because a lot of other shoe tubers or running shoe YouTubers actually use that term as well for content they do on their channel. But again, it's just going to be me riffing on shoes because based on the comments, everyone seems to like that. And there is no shoe more appropriate to start the first episode of Shoe Talk with than the Nike Pegasus 41. Now, I spent all of last week putting out all the initial content that I'm going to put out about this shoe. There's one more video coming, which will be next week, which will be a comparison with the shoe I'll talk about in a moment. But this shoe has been a joy for me. And I admit I have a big bias for the Pegasus. I love the Pegasus. And I really love this Pegasus, and I'm really surprised how much I'm enjoying this Pegasus because I was not expecting to enjoy this Pegasus. Based on the prototype leaks that I watch really in the winter, all spring, some of the last minute changes, some of the geometry, some of the sculpting of this, the move to ReactX foam, I was fully prepared for this to be the first Pegasus that I was like, nah, I don't like it. And in fact, I expected not to like this shoe. So in the first run I did in this shoe, I was really surprised how much I liked it straight out of the box on that first run. And then the runs I did after that, all those subsequent runs after that, it just got better and better. Everything I've talked about this shoe, this sort of, very neutral, flat, low to the ground, great ground feel. A lot of the things that people don't like about the Peg were there for me initially, and it was amazing for me. Now, it's been a little frustrating with this shoe online in this shoe tube space because it's also that time of year with the Pegasus where everyone seems to just want to dunk on the Peg because the Peg isn't innovative enough. The Peg is boring. The Peg needs this. The Peg needs that. Like, no. The Peg needs nothing other than to be a Peg. And this Peg is probably the best Peg that we've had in many, many years. This is Nike doubling down on what makes the Peg Peg, going back to the classic tradition. Now, I've made a lot of videos talking about the importance of the Peg, and I really mean it, where this is probably, to me, the most important running shoe that comes out every year, because I think it sets the trend for where Nike is headed. And again, I made a 48-minute video last year about that. It was the third video on this channel. I'll put a link in the description if you want to see that tracing from 2017 all the way to 2023. But the gist of that is that the Pegasus is the shoe that kind of sets the trajectory for where Nike is headed as a company. Now, Nike's had a lot of struggles recently. I covered this in a couple videos. Link in the description if you're interested. And it really feels like Nike is doubling down on what made Nike Nike. They're going back to what made certain heritage running lines, the Structure, the Pegasus, the Vomero, so good and so well loved, and really the anchor of Nike running. And this shoe feels very much like that. It's Nike going back to what made the Peg Peg and going back to the classic and really doubling down on that. So that gives me hope for where Nike's headed. I know a lot of people are totally down on Nike trainers. I know a lot of people are totally down on this, the Peg 41, because there's not enough cushion. It doesn't have, the right feel in the forefoot because it's not max stacked rockered shoe. It's boring. Like everything I said, like all this stuff that you hear year after year after year after year about the Peg from people who never run in the Peg other than when they do the one video a year about the peg. So I am excited about where Nike's headed. This shoe has been quite nice to run in, and I think, again, it's setting the precedence for what we should expect with Nike in the coming years, doubling back to what made Nike Nike, and Nike running being sort of the real key line within Nike in general. So a lot of hope for where this shoe's headed. And if this is the start of their big innovation super cycle, there's a lot of great stuff ahead. And one other thing I want to mention about this shoe that I didn't really talk about in any of the content I made last week about it, but I'll get to probably in my long-term review of this shoe, is part of why I like this shoe so much. And it took me a bit to remember this because it has actually been a while since I ran in Nike. I spent a lot of last year and I spent a lot of the previous years running in Nike. But after the New York City Marathon last November, I didn't really run in another Nike. I ran in the Vomero 17 a bit in December, a bit in January, but then I ran into a problem. I made a video about that, link in the description. And after about the end of January of this year, other than a couple runs in the Vaporfly 3, 1 or 2 runs in the Vaporfly 2, and one really short run in the Alphafly, the original Alphafly, just to remember how that shoe felt, I haven't really run in Nike. So putting this shoe on last week when I got it, or 10 days ago now when I got it, was the first time I had really seriously run in a Nike shoe other than a workout in a Vaporfly 3, this shoe specifically, in some time. So it was really good to reconnect to the feel of a Nike shoe. And I've talked about this a little bit. I've referenced it, but I haven't directly said it. Part of what makes Nike shoes feel unique to me, and it's a lot of what people are complaining about in this shoe, is the toe-off feeling. I talk a lot about driving into the ground. You get a big flat platform here, driving to the ground, and then toe-off is really nice. Now, something that is unique to Nike is they have very little foam under the toe of the shoe. So when you're toeing off in a Nike, you're kind of very much on the ground. And that's not unique to the Pegasus. That's across every shoe. So if you look at the Vaporfly 3, compared to the rest of the midsole in this shoe, the toe-off area in this shoe is actually very minimal. So the toe-off in the Vaporfly 3 is very minimal. You're kind of directly pressing into the ground. I have mentioned that in Vaporfly videos before, but it's something that I felt again in this shoe. And I think it's something that a lot of other people are feeling in this shoe that they don't like, because that's kind of the opposite of pretty much what every other brand is doing right now. But that Nike toe-off feel is very special. It's very unique. And I'm reconnecting to it in this shoe, which is making me dig this shoe back out and, starting to spend some time to do some more serious workouts in this shoe. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited about this pairing again. The Pegasus and the Vaporfly are two shoes that I will always cover on this channel. No matter what Nike does, no matter what I feel about Nike, these two shoes I will always care about because they just go so well together, and I've spent so much time over the years in them, and it's nice to come back to them. It's been too long. Moving to Adidas. Now, this was a surprise. I had been waiting for the SL2 for, 10, 12 days ever since this released globally. But here in Taiwan, we didn't have this shoe. I went to the flagship Adidas store here in Taipei multiple times, talked to the manager, asked, when are you getting this shoe? No one I talked to knew when this shoe was going to show up. It wasn't even in their system. And I did this last Friday. So Monday, when this shoe appeared across pretty much every big Adidas store here in Taipei, it was a surprise. It's only this colorway, which is a bit of a weird colorway. It's one that I don't see in many other places. It's not my favorite colorway, but it's also it's not the worst either. But I'm just happy to have this shoe. Now, I went out and did a 10 mile or 16K run yesterday in this shoe. I did it on very tired legs, so it wasn't the best first impression of this shoe, but I'm going to spend quite a bit more time in this shoe, and I'm quite excited about this shoe, and I'll have my initial impressions video up this Sunday. So this week's Sunday video will be my initial impressions on this shoe. But I'm going to say this isn't what I expected. I actually had run not quite a bit, but I had run a bit in the SL. In fact, I owned a pair of SLs when I first started this channel, but I never covered it on this channel because at the time I wasn't sure how much Adidas content I was actually going to do. I thought it was going to be more Nike focused. So by the time I decided I'm going to cover Adidas, I had already kind of put the SL in the donation bin. I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't a Pegasus. So I just wasn't running in it much. But I spent about 75, maybe 80 miles in that shoe. I enjoyed it. It was very stiff. I didn't really feel the Lightstrike Pro on the forefoot. But overall, I thought it was a great trainer, but it just wasn't up to par with what the rest of the Adi Zero line is. But my initial impression right now, and I'm going to develop this more as I run into more this week and on Sunday's video, is this shoe now makes sense in the Adi Zero lineup. It totally makes sense. In fact, I'm getting major Boston 12 vibes in this shoe. It's not what I expected, and it's not quite a Boston 12. Obviously, there's no plate in this shoe. This is a non-plated shoe, but I think this has got enough of the Boston 12 DNA in it without a plate that the way a lot of people were using the Boston 12 as a super trainer, whatever that term is, and doing daily running, easy running, this is a much, much better shoe for that. So more to come on this. Next week is going to be pretty much all SL2 content, and I'll have a lot more to say about this shoe, and there'll be some key comparisons coming out about this shoe, but I have a pair. I put 10 miles into it. I'm excited about it, and I have some thoughts, but I need to develop them further. And lastly for Adidas, there's two other shoes that are kind of on my radar right now. The first one is the Adidas Supernova Prima. Now, I have made a secret that I love the Supernova Rise. It is one of my favorite shoes right now of the year. And because of that, and because of recent content I put out on that shoe, I've had a lot of people asking me, am I going to try the Prima? Well, my initial response was, no, I'm not going to try the Prima, because everything I love about this Supernova Rise is that there's so little foam in that shoe. It's so flexible. So just putting more foam in it and making it a max stack, max cushion trainer, it's not for me. However, the more I've thought about it and the more people have asked about it, the more I was thinking like, I do really love the Supernova Rise, and I think the Supernova series and what Adidas is doing with that series is really cool. So it would be interesting to try another Supernova. Now, the Supernova Solution, their stability shoe, I'm not interested in that because I don't need a stability shoe. The Supernova Stride, that's their budget shoe. I've actually tried it on. It's fine as a casual shoe, but I wouldn't buy it to run in. So the Prima is kind of the other one to try. So the Prima is not released here in Taiwan. But again, shoes here in Taiwan just sort of appear out of nowhere. You can go in and ask about them, one day, no one has any idea, then the next morning they're on the shelf. So I don't know when the Prima will appear here, but when it does, I will try it on and see what I think. Because there's another Adidas shoe that I'm actually oddly curious about, the Adidas Adistar BYD or Beyond. I don't know why I'm interested in this shoe. Everything about this shoe is not what I want or like about a shoe, but there's something about this shoe that I'm curious about. So this shoe is also not released here in Taiwan, and no one knows when this is going to come. And I've talked to some local Taiwanese runner influencer people, and they kind of think that this shoe probably will never come to Taiwan because we don't actually get all of the Adidas shoes. Like we don't have any of the Terex line at all here in Taiwan. So we'll see. I do think it'll appear here, but it's going to be random. So based on which one of these two shoes appears first, that's probably the one I'm going to cover because I don't think I'm going to do both. I don't need two max stack shoes to cover. I'm going to lean towards the Prima because I want to get the context for the Supernova, but we'll see which one of these two gets here first, and I will cover one of them. Which one? Again, depends on what shows up first. Moving on to Asics. I've been spending quite a bit of time in workouts in this shoe, the Metaspeed Edge Paris. And for the most part, it's been enjoyable. But recently I've been running into some issues with this shoe. Now I'm about 120 kilometers into this shoe, or about 75 miles. I'm trying to get it to 100 miles so I can do my full review of the shoe because I do want to talk about it. And there's a bunch I want to talk about in this shoe. But there's two issues I'm running into recently that I want to kind of preview in this video. The first one is that this shoe has definitely broken in, meaning the foam in the shoe, the FF Turbo Plus, has definitely softened up. softened up considerably. It's still very much a shoe that feels like you're on a platform of foam, which is one of the issues. You're not sinking into this foam. It's just a much squishier foam. Squishy is maybe not the best word, but it's definitely a much softer foam that you can feel a lot of side to side movement in, which is exaggerated because this shoe is so tall and so narrow of a platform. So initially, the first, 30, 40K in this run where the foam was still fairly stiff, I would run into a lot of problems with this shoe on cambered roads, bad pavement, because it just would be all over the place. But now that this foam has softened up so much, I'm running into that problem even on smooth pavement because there's so much instability for me in this shoe that it's problematic. And that's contributing to really what the big problem is I'm running into this shoe is that it's just destroying my legs. I did a fairly hard workout in this shoe Monday. By the way, if you want to see this stuff, it's all on my Strava. There'll be a link in the description for my Strava. And I did it in this shoe, and I've done previous workouts the past couple weeks in this shoe. Mostly 1K repeats. I've done some 800s, some 400s. I've been doing a lot of 5K fast speed work in this shoe. But the workout I did on Monday was not the hardest workout I did. It was a couple 1K repeats. I did some 200s and a couple 400s. But my legs were trashed. Absolutely trashed. I'm recording this video on Wednesday. My legs are still trashed. I did a trail run this morning. I had nothing in my quads or my glutes. My legs, thighs, everything was trashed because of this shoe. And I think it's because of the instability that is now in this platform. That softer foam now is making this shoe, as I said, very unstable, even on smooth pavement for me. And it's not really a problem. It's not giving me any sort of ankle problems because I have strong ankles because of trail running and a lot of the barefoot life that I kind of do. But what I think is actually happening is once I'm really not focusing on my form and I'm letting the shoe kind of move around a bit, it's requiring a lot of stability in different muscles, particularly in my glutes and my quads, my upper, into hips above the knee sort of thing, which is completely trashing my legs. Additionally, FF Turbo foam, not FF Turbo Plus, FF Turbo foam, if I did a hard workout in that foam, like in the Metaspeed Plus series, even the Superblast, my legs were trash in that shoe for 3 or 4 days. Like I could barely do more than a recovery jog the day after a hard workout in FF Turbo foam. It is just not a foam that my legs like, and I recover very poorly from it. Initially, I was getting decent recovery from FF Turbo Plus, but now I'm also seemingly getting some of the same problems with FF Turbo Plus that I had with FF Turbo. Mainly my feet, my Achilles, my calves feel just worked and beat up after a hard workout in the shoe. So having my feet sore, having my Achilles and my calves sore, plus my glutes and my quads completely shot because of a workout in the shoe has been a little problematic. So I'm going to develop this a bit more in my full review. So when that comes out next month, you'll hear this again, and maybe I'll have some further thoughts, but that's a little bit of a problem for this shoe with me. It's not killing the shoe. I still think this is a incredibly fast shoe, but you need to be really up on your form and really paying attention. Otherwise, it's going to beat you into the ground, and I'm definitely finding that out now. Staying on Asics as a topic, let's talk about the Magic Speed 4. Now, I'm going to say it right now, that's not a shoe I'm going to be covering. I loved the Magic Speed 3. I thought it was one of the best tempo trainers ever made. But with the update to the Magic Speed 4, there's been a little bit of a bait and switch, and Asics has sort of turned the Magic Speed now into just another generic super trainer that the world didn't need. And I'm not interested in that. The whole FF Turbo puck in the forefoot with FF Blast Plus, which is a foam I don't really like, with all that stack height, it's completely not a shoe that I want to run in. The upper changes, removing the motion wrap upper, which I thought was one of the best parts of the Magic Speed 3 for just another generic training upper. Again, I don't need that shoe. Now I watched a couple reviews on it. It seems a little mixed, but I think Kafuzi's review had a really interesting point, which makes me sure that I'm not going to try the Magic Speed 4. He said that he always thought the Magic Speed 2 and specifically 3 felt more like the tempo trainer to the Edge and didn't really have a lot of connection to the Sky. And I agree, I totally see that, where he's saying the Magic Speed 4 is much more the tempo trainer to the Sky. That makes sense. And that's great for people who like the Sky. The other thing I find interesting, though, is that with the recent generation, the Metaspeed Paris series, it seems like a lot of Asics pros actually are favoring the Edge now. So now Asics has a tempo trainer that works for the Sky. Just super interesting how Asics is sort of jumbling things around. I hope that this isn't setting a precedence for some disarray at Asics in their running line. They have enough overlap in shoes where they don't need that, but the Magic Speed 4 really does seem like a miss. I'm sure people are going to enjoy it. I'm sure it will, when it's out, there'll be more positive reviews on it, but it's just not a shoe I'm going to try. The other Asics shoe, though, is the Superblast 2, and that will be coming out in July. Now, we don't know a lot about this shoe. The assumption is that it's the same basic shoe as the Superblast. It's just got FF Turbo Plus in place of FF Turbo. That sounds good. But otherwise, geometry and Sakai and everything should be about the same. From the photos, it kind of looks the same. There's some more sculpting. There's a little bit more Nova Blast 4 design language into that shoe. I will be covering that shoe, but I have reservations about that shoe as well. One of the things that made the Superblast work so well was the harshness of FF Turbo blunted out by FF Blast Plus. I don't really like either foam alone, but together they worked very well in the Superblast, and I love the Superblast. FF Turbo Plus doesn't really need FF Blast Plus to mute it out. It already is a softer foam, so I'm wondering if the Superblast is going to feel too mushy now, which is going to be a problem. The other thing I'm going to say about the Superblast is I hope that they're not doing some sort of mystery thing in the forefoot or somewhere in that shoe like they did with the Magic Speed 4. I hope they just leave it the way it was. I wish they moved that more towards what I was calling a Meta Blast, kind of a non-plated actual race shoe. Think of a Metaspeed with no plate, just FF Turbo Plus. That would be an excellent shoe. It'd also be an excellent training shoe. Even with some of the problems I just talked about with the Metaspeed Paris series that I'm having with FF Turbo Plus, I still think that would be a great shoe. That's not the direction Asics is going. Hopefully the Superblast 2 is just as good as the Superblast. Otherwise, everyone over at Running Shoe Geeks on Reddit, they're going to completely lose their mind because you can't look at a post on that subreddit without the Superblast being referenced somewhere in that post. That's how much people over there love that shoe. So hopefully the Superblast 2 is good. I'll be covering it as soon as I can get a pair next month. And lastly, one other brand, Puma. The Puma Deviate Nitro 3 is coming out or it's out. I'm actually not sure the status of it. I've seen from Puma that they said it will be releasing in limited quantities worldwide, which means here in Taiwan, we're probably going to get like 3 pairs and I'll never see one. But as soon as I see one, I will pick it up because I am excited to cover the Deviate Nitro 3 because I love the Velocity Nitro 3 so much. I'm looking forward to the Deviate Nitro 3. A lot of these specs on the shoe that I've seen, they're not my thing, but I'm going to come into it with an open mind like I did with Saucony earlier this year and really give it a fair shot because I know people love that shoe. It got a lot of best ofs last year, the Deviate Nitro 2, so I'm really curious about that shoe. So as soon as I can get a pair, which at this point I have no idea when that will be, I will pick it up and I will be covering it on this channel. Hopefully that will be next month in July. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for making it to the end of the video. Let me know in the comments what you think about this sort of off-the-cuff, random shoe talk. I want a place to be able to talk about this stuff, not in one of my more structured formats like reviews or design analysis. So I love making these videos because I just want to sit here and nerd out about shoes, and that's what this video is meant to be. So let me know in the comments what you think. I know some of you love this stuff, but you know, if this is the first time watching one of these videos, let me know in the comments what you think below.